Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the How to Write a Book podcast. I'm excited for today's author, Tyler Schwanke, who is the author of Breaking In, a novel. And of course, I was going to be gravitated toward this book. I mean, it's about Hollywood. It is a super interesting story. It's about a character named Millie who attends this really prestigious movie academy and then finds out that her favorite director has taken her script. And so she plans this big heist on how to either get it back or to get back at him. Kirkus Reviews has called this a fast-paced homage to the classic heist film, and I love that. And what I really liked about this interview is that Tyler was so open about the creative process and what kind of feedback he was going through, and then also I think his background in the MFA world and how that is a different kind of circle of reviewers and feedback people. So it's really cool to kind of see that highlighted and how he took advantage of it and how that helped him. Very awesome stuff. So I'm excited to talk about this. Let's dive in with Tyler. I'm really excited. All right, people, let's dive in.
Welcome to the How to Write a Book podcast, the show that helps you plan, write, and publish your book, even if you're a beginner or just feel like one. Now, for your host, she's written over a dozen books and helps others bring their books to life. Here she is, Maciel.
All right, and welcome back to the How to Write a Book podcast. Hello, Tyler Schwanke. How are you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Where are you calling us from?
I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we are going through 12-hour seasons right now. So yesterday it was 70, well, I guess it was 2 days ago. It was 70 degrees, gorgeous out, right? Light sweatshirt, take it off after 10 minutes because you're getting warm. And then the last 2 days have been gray, cold, rainy, 30 to 40 degrees. So, and it's supposed to get warm again by Friday. So we get all the seasons here in Minneapolis. It's just, it's that really dumb dad joke that I shouldn't tell and I'm going to, but if you don't like the weather, just wait an hour and then you'll get something else. So yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. I've only ever lived really in California. So I'm never what's
where,
that? Yeah.
Where are you in California?
I'm in LA. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So yeah, but I was born and raised in the Bay Area, which is in the middle of California.
Yeah. I've been to LA a couple times for this book. Convinced my wife, I was like, we really need to go to LA for 5 days. So I'm getting it right. So, the third act takes place mostly outside the El Capitan on Hollywood Boulevard. So I was like, I could use Google Street View, but I should really go there. And so we did the whole tourist thing and it was super fun. So, but we went to San Francisco, been there a couple times, was at Boucher Con last year. So that was in San Diego. So yeah, California's fun.
I love that. Well, speaking of, let's dive right in. Tell us about your book, Breaking In.
Sure. So, Breaking In is about 17-year-old, filmmaker Millie Blomquist. Millie lives in Fargo, North Dakota. She, her main goal in life is to get a script that she has written. It's a heist script about her late father, based on a true story. He was a thief that kind of hid that side of his life from Millie, her whole life, and it wasn't until there was a bank heist during the COVID pandemic that he was the inside man on, because they were on the verge of losing their home. So he felt he had to pull off this heist. He got killed, and that's how Millie found out about, that he had this whole other side of him. So she wrote this screenplay to really kind of honor the type of person he was. Not that he was a thief, but that he would go to these extremes to try to provide for his family and try to show this side. So it was a really personal script. And she goes to a film school in New York. It's because of her age, it's like a film camp. It's 10 weeks. And where you get paired with other film students and you enter this competition where you make a short film based upon a feature-length script that you've written. So I think of films like Whiplash, that first started as a student film. They did well, and then they, made the feature. So the idea of this competition at this film school is, so you submit a short film and a feature-length script, and then the winner gets I think it's like $300,000, a modest budget to make the movie, but because it's a semi-prestigious school, not like NYU or anything, but they get other people that always invest in the film. So it's a really kind of like way to, get your start in Hollywood. And Millie, even though she's young, they've opened it up where the high schoolers can compete as well. Well, right before they're about to finish their film, the school is closed because the director who runs the school, Ricky O'Neill, who also happens to be Millie's favorite director, is arrested for stealing from students fraudulent charges, stealing tuition, overpricing them. So the school closes down. 7 months later, Millie is at home in Fargo. She's in a movie theater. She's watching the coming attractions. She looks up and she sees a movie for the new, a preview for the new Ricky O'Neill movie, and it's her movie. The trailer is almost a shot for shot of her short film. It's a reworking of her title, but it's essentially her movie. And so it turns out that it's like one of these like secret, movies, like I think of like Cloverfield, right? Where it just all of a sudden was like, it's going to be out in 2 weeks and people went nuts for it. So it's going to be released in 2 weeks. And because of the film school and the way the competition was set up, legally he can do this. He can steal her idea. He doesn't have to give her any credit, anything like that. But he doesn't want her going, to the press and ruining his reputation. So he gives her $20,000 and like hush money, right, to go away. Yeah, to go away. Money. So she takes that money and uses that to fund a heist where she turns her film crew into a heist crew, and then she uses all the film knowledge that she's learned when she was writing her script to steal the movie 3 days before the premiere and hold it for ransom. So that's the premise, is them getting together, trying to figure out how does that translate working as a team in the filmmaking industry, where basically you're pulling off a lie, right? But it's in front of a camera. How do you take those same kind of techniques and apply that to stealing in real life, or creating an alternate scenario where you can steal something? So yeah, and it's just it's a fun book. It's some of my favorite movies are like the Ocean's 11 movies, The Sting, just these movies that I always grew up on, and I just really loved the idea of taking kind of that premise of the love of heist movies, but then like trying to translate that to actual pulling one off, and like where you would succeed, but then more so where you would end up short, kind of go from there.
Wow, yeah. And based on what I was reading, she also like discovers something about her father on this journey. Is that correct? Yes.
So later on in the book, because I don't want to give too much away, but basically, so with their stealing of the movie and planning that, kind of the wrong people catch wind of what's going on and insert themselves into the robbery and the ransom, and you learn, that kind of the head of these group of criminals, I don't like pack, group of criminals, has history with Millie's father and what the connection is there. So it becomes, already was personal one end, and now she's having to go through with this for a whole different reason. And then kind of, her father's past catching up to her as well.
Wow, that's awesome. That sounds really cool. So, there's so much going on there. I'm not even sure where to begin, but I do know where
sure.
to begin, actually.
Yeah.
So where did this idea start? That's my first question.
Yeah. Well, I think, so for me, I don't know, I started writing fiction 13, 14 years ago. When it comes to like novels, I'd gone to film school. I'd worked on some films, some short films, but when you're in film school, unless you have, kind of like a really decent budget set aside, and an idea, ahead of time, you're kind of just using what you have as a student. So a lot of the short films were, about college-age friends figuring stuff out, and trying to be humorous and that kind of thing. But I never really got to do kind of like the bigger ideas that I had because I didn't have a budget for it. And so I started kind of like writing down ideas and collecting them. And then at one point I just decided, you know what? I think it's time for me to make a transition from writing screenplays to writing novels. This is something that, because with the screenplay, where do I move from that? You need all this production and all this other stuff. And I just really like the idea of kind of owning it from a novel piece. Plus, I've always wanted to write a novel, so I just wanted to see if I could do it. So I wrote 2 books that my mom and my wife really like, and those are 2 different people, I want to say. But so I have to clarify that. But it's but those were like kind of just learnings for me, right? Learning how to write a book, and it's one of those things where you learn more from failure than success. And so I totally learned so many things about pacing wise and like editing a book. Don't self-edit as you're going. Don't write 5 chapters and then, reread those 5 chapters to death, because you're going to write another 5 chapters and those previous 5 chapters are totally going to need to change. So, get a whole draft together before you think about actually implementing any changes. What I do is I keep a running document where I just write down ideas for the next draft. And then once I get there, I read the first draft or the previous draft, see where my ideas lie, and some of them apply and some of them don't. But then that way I didn't waste, 2 weeks implementing an idea that in the long run doesn't fit, whatever I'm trying to say about the story, or just, how the plot's working at this point, or maybe a decision a character made that I didn't know they were going to make that during the outline, and it kind of changed everything. So, sorry, see, I told you I wander off. I get off topic. But
I love it.
So I wrote a couple books, and I just I wanted to keep going because I just loved it and felt that I was getting closer. And I always, when out of film school, I got a job working for Stanley Security. So like Stanley Black & Decker. I would listen to so I worked in Plymouth, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, and we mostly monitored in like Spokane, Washington, and the surrounding areas. And so I always just thought, this is the part where I like confess something. People are like, oh yeah, that's sketchy, dude. But like, I just thought like, okay, if you're the wrong person, right? Like you've got all these, like you've all the access codes, all the stuff, you could just take that and jot it down, because as a you're always taking notes throughout the day, just working in that environment. So you could easily start writing codes and stuff down and pocket it. And nobody, anyway, so
totally.
I never did that, but I thought about like, how could you do that? So then that's where this first idea came out about a kind of starving film student living at home, because I wasn't starving, but I was living at home. And, trying to get my career off the ground. And so he decides to pull off a job by stealing these codes and then like robbing like a Costco or something, right? But like, and then people start finding out that a work about it, they all want in, and becomes this whole thing where, and it's just a complete disaster. And that was the thing. I got to the point where I was like, number one, they're so dumb now. Why would you root for them? And then 2, like, what do you do? Like, at a Costco, like, would I have to go to a Costco and be like, excuse me, sir, where do you keep the safe? Like, if I had the codes, where would I go? So I thought it was a funny idea, but I didn't think it was spending, a year writing in a book. So, but I really liked that idea. I wrote all these notes down and I held on to them, for a long time. And then I came back to them, in my MFA program, and it was for like a different assignment. I didn't even write this book for the program. It was just something that I did separately. But I really liked it. But then I had also written, since taking all these notes, I had written a YA book, kind of a coming of age, because that's a genre of mine that I've always really liked and enjoyed reading. So I decided to kind of combine the two, a coming of age heist caper is kind of how I looked at it. And then it kind of expanded from there. Because a lot of the influences are like Elmore Leonard, like Get Shorty and, kind of from the humor and some of the style of the prose. But also, I wanted just like a really, just kind of intelligent, capable young woman that, is utilizing all this different data. That was another thing too, is I had all this, I watched all these heist movies and I would take notes and I'd be like, how am I going to read this? Like, these are paragraphs. This is stupid. I don't, so I, made a spreadsheet. It's just so dorky. It's the dorkiest thing I've ever done. But I made a spreadsheet and it was like, how many, so you put the name and it's like, does this open on a heist? Is this a con getting out of jail? Because that's a popular one, Is it, and if it does it open on a heist? Are they wearing costumes? Is it a legendary thief? Is it a one last job? Is it, X, Y, and Z? And next thing you know, I had like 20 subcategories and all this stuff. And, but it was just a much more manageable way to do it. But I was like, this is great. So Millie has to do this too, or my lead has to do this. And I was like, there's no way. I never knew any guy at 17 years old in high school that would be capable of pulling all this together. Like, I've always known really strong women, always been really friends with really strong women. And in high school, I cheated off strong women, and, so I was like, okay, because I think originally, the main character was Miles, and I was like, no, this has got to be female. There's just no way. There's no way I'll buy it. So there's no way that I can get the audience to buy it too. And then I just named her Millie, because it was Miles, and I thought, well, this is comparable. But then also Millie is my late grandmother's name, so I just thought that was a nice little nod, a little touch.
Aww.
So yeah, so that's where that came from.
Oh, I love that. That's so sweet. And I love how you went from, all right, if this is the character, then they have to be this, all right, it's going to be Millie. That's some great, detective work. I think it's cool. So, you said something really interesting. You were talking about edits and not to do this by yourself. And actually, you have a really methodical way of approaching your book. I'm just curious. Let me switch questions for a second.
Sure.
Are you an outliner or are you more of a pantser?
Heavy outliner.
Yeah.
But I feel we get a bad rep. I do. I feel like, oh, you outline? Oh, yeah. Stephen King just sits down and just it just flows from him. It's like, well, he's a generator. He's a spiritual, they just flow through him. I am not, yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. I am not that. If I don't have an outline, I will literally stare at my computer screen for 2 hours and kind of check my email, repeatedly as well. So, but I do think with outlining, so I use kind of a movie type formula that I heard about and read about, back in my film school days. So it's a little bit like, Robert McKee's Story. It's a little bit Save the Cat. And kind of, so taking that and so these are the things, right? These are your acts, and then these are, the different situations, but it's also more of just okay, is this a positive thing for your character? Or is this a negative thing, right? So you're just because it's ebb and flows, right? That's working up that tension. It can't all be one thing. So taking that, making sure I have kind of all my elements. But before I even start outlining, I do character bios. I have a 2-page list that for my lead and then main supporting characters. I'll do where I'll ask questions like, how do they view themselves? And then how does the world view them? What's their biggest accomplishment? What's their biggest fear, biggest shame? Things of that nature, stuff that will never really probably ever come up in the text, but it's just, I feel like I get to know them a little bit better. Yeah. And then even more useful, I think the most useful thing I do is, so I get an idea of what characters are going to be like. And I did this for, one of the characters in Breaking In, her name is Paz, and she's a Latina cinematographer, and I thought she was really going to be, I don't know, maybe a little bit more brash and kind of more no nonsense, because that's how like DPs kind of are, like director of photography, because they're just like, this is my shot, don't touch my shot, I know what I'm doing, don't touch my lights. And I knew that wouldn't totally work, but I had kind of her pegged like that from I did her bio, and then I do something where I'll have like characters just have like conversations with each other about nothing really in particular. I can't stop writing for 10 minutes. They all have to talk, right? And with Breaking In especially, so it's Millie and then her film crew, which is her heist crew, and it grows throughout the book. As much as she doesn't want it to, it has to because of the parameters of the heist. But there's a lot of time where it's just like the four of them, and then they all have such kind of, different personalities. So I wanted to see how that would gel and just having them talk to each other. And like Pod's character totally changed. Like she is much more sarcastic, much more kind of like bigger scheme. I don't know, but it was just even like the way she like kind of talked, and when she was more quiet and talked more with purpose. And it was just interesting because that's nothing that I wrote down when I was thinking about her. But so those are the kind of things that I do before I even get to writing an outline. So when it's like, okay, something positive just happened, I need like a false victory, right? They thought this is great. Let's turn the tables on them. I know what is going to like influence their decisions or affect them the most. So because I have all this background, so it's not just like you write an outline, this is a cool scene, and then as I'm going, like, try to figure it to make sense. It's motivated the same way I think that it would be if, you just sat down and started writing. As long as you're true to the characters, that's how the story evolves.
Yeah. And I love that you're like, you have this organization, you're approaching it with logic, but still you're letting the characters do what they want to do once they get onto the page. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, and I think it really shows, at least when I do it. Maybe other people are better at it, but when I do whenever I've tried something for plot, it reeks of plot. Mm-hmm. And it's what people, if they're too nice of beta readers to tell me, they might not mention it, which is almost worse because it's like, oh, come on, you have to talk about this. Like, how could you not? Did you even read this thing? But also I trust a lot on I trust all of them, I should say, my beta readers, right? But, go ahead, be honest, tell me at this point and, kind of go from there. But yeah, if you don't, I lost my train of thought, but I picked it up. And I didn't cover it well at all. I thought maybe I did, and I totally did. And then I lost it again. Forget it.
No worries. No worries. The next question actually brought it up. Cool. Beta readers. What's your beta reading process like? Yeah. So I have, friends that I've got from film school that kind of, they approach. It's interesting, sending them novels and just kind of like, I don't know, like I wasn't even sure if they've ever, like, not ever read novels, but like they don't normally read a lot of novels. Like we never talked books, so I was like, how long is this going to take them? Because like if they send me a book, I get it back to them like 2 weeks tops, right? More so because I'd be so curious, like what? What are you doing?
But like, the last book they read, it took them like 7 months. So, I tried to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to really be able to do much with this feedback. And I actually sometimes will I have one friend that I'll be just like, okay, dude, you have like 3 weeks. And then after that, if you don't like something, like you take it to your grave because there's nothing I can do about it because I'm moving on. You had this window. But a lot of my beta readers come from my MFA program. I work full time. I still do. One of the things that was really cool about the company I previously worked for is that they give tuition reimbursement. So, and they would allow me to go get my MFA in writing when I worked in HR. So I don't know why they said yes, but they did. It was super cool. So I basically got my master's. I think I personally paid for one class. So that's really cool.
Nice.
Books and everything. I'm still paying for my undergrad, but my master's is all paid up. But I went there because I knew filmmakers and I knew screenwriters, but I didn't know any novelists or short story writers. So
Yeah.
I was just like, and really I wanted to workshop stuff and I wanted to read other people's stuff. Cause I had no idea what good writing was. But that's not true. I read books, but I didn't know what like unpublished people wrote. Like, what's it supposed to look like at this stage? Cause my stuff does not look at all like I want it to, but I think it's okay. Like, I think there's promise. And how do I learn, to talk to other people about it? And, so anyway, so I went to school and just, over time, I just looked at, whoever was a stronger writer than me, I said, I want them to be my beta reader. Like, I want to work with them, because that's impressive. I don't know how you do that, and I want to do that. So yeah. And that's just kind of how it evolved from there. So, and that's just been a big, and now my agent is part of the process too. So I will send to, I usually write 3 drafts, possibly it's like 3.5, I guess you could say. So like 3 drafts and a polish. And then we'll send it to my beta readers, take any feedback they have. I don't remember the quote exactly, but it's from Stephen King's On Writing, when he talks about, the editing, and it's, when you're getting feedback, it's, the majority wins. So it's like, 5 people say this is a problem, you got to fix it. If 2 people say it's a problem, 3 don't, you don't have to fix it. And if it's a tie, it goes to the author. You decide if you want to change it or not. So, and I just, I think that just really tells something, because there have been times, or certainly I know I've got something that I'm like super proud of, or I think is clever, and, and if you ever think you're clever, you're not, right? That's kind of how that works. So yeah, it just kind of continued from there, and then work with my agent. He usually does some line edits, and then we will go through, kind of like theme and clean everything up and make sure it's at a point where, to present. So that's kind of been the process for us now. And, sometimes we're at the point like, okay, now we can, it's ready for submission, or sometimes there's some, sometimes where it's like, this isn't really working, or this isn't coming through, I think, like you intended to. And 9 times out of 10, it's because plot is overtaking, right? It's a point where, and it's just one of those things too, where I don't know about you, but like I have to step away after like 3 drafts, because I can't tell the difference anymore. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm making all this up. So you gotta just get to a point where it's just like, I need somebody else, because I know what I think works, and I'm not changing my mind here. So, but I also think when somebody points it out to you, but you've also had some time away from it, then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, no joke. Yeah, I would have said that too. So, but no, anyway, I think beta readers I think it's a huge component, but really just make sure that you are, asking people whose opinion you're going to listen to. Don't ask it. I said that in my MFA program, I, kind of sought after those that were better writers than me. And I ended up working and exchanging work with a lot of them, but not all of them, because some of them we would, once they do a short story or be in a small group or something, and just be like, I think they're a tremendous writer, but they're not they don't write I'm not their audience, and vice versa. And I think it's just, and that's okay. That doesn't mean they're, less or I'm less or anything like that. It's just there's different audiences. So, but yeah, just make sure that you're asking people and you're not just doing it because you think that you need other people to read your work,
Yeah. Yeah, I like how you have those parameters there. Now you said something earlier that I was curious about. You said that you probably do about 3 drafts and then it goes off to a reader. Now, what makes a draft for you? I feel like sometimes everyone has a different definition of draft. So what for you is like, this is a draft, now it's going to the next draft?
Yeah, a draft for me is where I will go through. I mean, from first draft to second draft, it really is chapter to chapter, where I will go through and, like I said, I have usually, like, for my second draft, I have like 15 pages of notes and ideas. Because for me, my writing process is I write first thing in the morning, for usually 90 minutes to 2 hours. And then I work remotely, and then, I go on with my day. I used to, work in an office, and it wasn't that bad of a commute, but I'd get up at 5, and I would write from like 5:15 to 7:15, and then go into work. And the reason why I did that is because if I didn't write every single day, it was never going to get done. I've done weekends. Also, I went through some really bad like shoulder and neck issues, and it was from literally being at a desk too long and having bad posture and all that stuff. And so it kind of just got to a point where I was like, I can't do 9-hour writing sessions anymore, because I was doing that, and it's super fun, but it takes its toll on the body. So okay, well then do 2 hours, every day, and also helps get you to the next day. But because there'll be times where I feel like, yeah, I'm doing really great, but I don't go past the 2 hours, right? I write notes, detailed notes of where I am, and then that way tomorrow I can pick up. I have something to start with. The harder days are where I'm starting a new chapter, and I might not have notes, but it's so much better, so much easier, I guess I'd say, for me at least, if I'm like halfway through a paragraph and I can just finish, like I have notes like, this is what you want to happen next, and like, write that out, or like, okay, bam, I'm right back into it, as opposed to if it's a new chapter, it's like, okay, let's kind of figure this out again. How is this changing? But, so really going through each act, each draft, each chapter, putting it together, walking away from it for usually about 2 weeks to have somewhat of a fresh set of eyes, as much as I can. And then, reading it, in one sitting if I can, depending upon how long. I usually can't with my first draft because I overwrite like way too much. So my first draft of like breaking in, I think was, 155,000 words.
Oh, nice. Wow.
And the one I submitted to the publisher was 84,000, and the one that was published was 93,000. So, I mean, and I've had different versions and lengths, of it going through the process too. So usually that's too, is my books for the kind of genre that I, really 80 to 100,000. So, if I'm above that mark, then I'm doing another draft because I've got to get it down to that. That's, and I know that publishers buy books that are longer than that. Me personally, I'm a big pace guy. I think for comedy, thrillers, even just like, coming of age and that kind of stuff is you got to keep good pace. You got to know when, an emotional moment can happen. So, then let's add a funny moment here, then offset it with some action, or however that's going to work. But I'm a big pace. So anything over 100,000 for my stories, at least, is just, that's plenty long. They don't need to be longer than that. So that's too, that helps me. That kind of guides me where, if I go from, like the one I'm working on right now, I'm sending it to my agent in about maybe 2 months, probably.
Nice.
So, and that's one where, I'm really cutting for pace at this point. I've done my character drafts, where like, okay, this isn't coming through with the character, or I'm not getting this part, or, I totally understand that backstory, but it's not interesting anymore. So, and it doesn't come into effect. And that's the thing too. When I was talking earlier about how like you should just write one full draft before you edit anything and change, it's because you can. I mean, depending upon how many subplots and everything you have, I don't know. I want it to all work, after one draft, but most of the time I have like the main plot's working pretty good and maybe like one or two subplots. And I usually have too many. That's the biggest thing. It's like, okay, let's take some of this stuff and let's put it into these subplots, and then the rest we'll save for, a rainy day, another project, or if I'm, feel like it's stuck at some points, I can look, through that stuff. But, yeah, that kind of is what helps, steer that. And then just, when it's working. So, but also I try to stop at the 3 drafts and a polish before I start sending out to somebody, because, you could just keep writing the same book your whole life and never turn it in, like that's so easy to do. And at some point you just need, especially if you don't have an agent, if you don't have a publisher asking for your book and you don't have a date or anything like that, you're the only one that can make that deadline, or, and so give yourself one and stick with it. I mean, you can always change stuff later, but if you want to know how you're doing or how it's coming together, you have to get outside opinion. At least for me, this is stuff that has worked for me. But and I know really terrific, fantastic writers that we should all have their big epic fantasy series, and their sci-fi vampire ones. I'm speaking in code to a couple writers that need to write, because they have these really great stories, but they're just finding the time. And it's like, this is it. This is it. Now's the time. And I think just having that deadline of, okay, I've done 3 drafts. I'm going to hand it to somebody. I'm going to have somebody read it, because I could be there, or I could, keep tinkering with it. And also I think just, sometimes, for me, at least in my first couple books that I wrote that didn't, those are my learning from, I think I over-edited them. I think I took out a lot of stuff that later on I was like trying to figure out where I took it out, put it back in. And I think I was, like I mentioned, I cut for pace, but like I don't sacrifice character. But I had to learn that, right? I was like taking out all these moments because I was like, this is too long, but really my plot was too intricate, right? It was too much, and it was getting muddled, and I was taking out all the stuff from why you're supposed to care about the plot. And, but again, that's why, I think you just have to write and continue to do it, and then evaluate yourself, but then also at some point move on to the next project. I remember after I wrote my first book, and I queried like 250 agents. I probably got that's not true. I bet it was like 150 for my first one. And then my second one was like another 110 or something like that. So I think total it was like 250. And I remember, I definitely queried over 100 agents. I maybe got like 10 requests, roughly 10, 12, either partials or fulls. And then it never went anywhere, right? And I remember thinking like, okay, you have to start something else now. Like that's just, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You keep looking at your email, right, dude, you have more than one story. But then I'd be like, do I? But more so it'd be like, but I have all these cool descriptions that took me forever. So I would like, I stripped those first 2 books for parts, and taking descriptions and be like, I liked how that sounds. I'm going to use it here for that, kind of a thing. So again, it's all practice. And, you, like I said earlier, you definitely learn more, from failure than you do success.
Yeah, I love that. I know we're getting near our time, but there's something that you've hit on that I would love for you just to kind of maybe summarize in your own words. Your relationship with feedback. What is your relationship? Like, what is that relationship now? Has it always been that way?
I think in filmmaking, I was probably, I don't know, I don't want to say sensitive, but I was definitely defensive. I would say I was defensive, right? I would say, well, I tried this, or, this is what I'm working with, or whatever, kind of making excuses. And when I started writing novels, again, I started writing on my own, and I just had, friends and family, read stuff of it. I actually would sometimes send friends, after a chapter would be done, I would send it to them and be like, what do you think? And they'd be like, I don't like this and this and this. Or they'd be like, I don't know why you're describing, when the brother's talking to the sister, he squatted down like a catcher in a baseball game. Get back to the dialogue. Where are you going? I remember I wrote this whole thing about somebody got shot, and so they put a towel, and then the main a towel over to cover stop the bleeding, and then the main character remembers the last time they used that towel was at a beach. It was this beautiful day, and this happy memory. And I think it was my sister actually, who was just because this is when I was living at home, kind of inspiration for breaking in. Right after college, and she was like, dude, somebody just got shot, and then I had to wait 2 paragraphs to find out what happened. Because what do you do, and oh yeah, cool, okay, thank you. Because I don't know, to me it was just I'm new at this. Yeah. And so I'm totally okay with criticism and with feedback, as long as it's coming from a productive place.
Yeah.
And because that's the way that I provide feedback, and I talk to, when I talk to other authors, because I think that number one, it is really difficult to, even now I've been doing this for 14 years, or anything, to give somebody, or with somebody, I know, hey man, I read your book. It was always just a minute, oh yeah. But also just cool, either you're part of the audience, or my audience, or you're not, but you give it a shot. And I think that's really cool of you to do. But for me, it was just more of, it was, being more open to it, and kind of seeing that. And then after a while, you figure out, again, who your audience is. So, that just kind of helps with, because there's so many options today, right? People, there's literally millions and millions of books out there. And so if somebody you could have one person that absolutely thinks it's the greatest book that's ever been written, you're a genius, and then they'll give it to a friend, and they're like, dude, that book sucked. That was so boring, or that none of that made sense, or anything, and it's so subjective, Mm-hmm. So ask people, get it in, but at the end of the day, it's your book, and it's your name on it. So, you have to like it above anything else. But for me, I'm really past the point of being, I don't know, defensive of my work. No, that doesn't mean I don't stick up for it. That doesn't mean if I get feedback and I don't agree with it, I'll say that, and say, okay, well, and depending on who I'm talking with, if it's my agent and he's like, well, this doesn't work, I'll be like, well, I think it does, and here's why. And, and he will support me, because at the end of the day, it's my book. But I also know that if he was to ever be like, no, I'm really serious about this, I'd be like, okay, he and that's because he's looking out for me, and but, and not in a controlling way, but more of a hey man, I want this to succeed. I want you to do well. And so that's why I'm open to feedback, because I think that people want me to succeed, because I want them to.
Nice. Love that. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are just about at time now. So will you tell us where they can find you, everyone here, and tell us where they can find Breaking In?
Absolutely. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on X, I'm on Instagram. And then you can get the book, wherever books are sold. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, what's that one? Kobo? Yeah, Kobo. Google Books, iTunes, it's on there. So it's available in hardcover, and ebook. And I think, oh, that's right, this won't until June. Never mind. I was going to promote a sale, but I don't think that's next week, I think. But also, there's an audiobook, and the audiobook is super cool. There's two actors that do the voice work. Jesse Valinsky and Patrick Lawler, both are absolutely phenomenal. But I didn't realize, I talked about like when I have, to get to know my characters, I would do scenes, conversations where they would talk with each other, right? So I didn't like ever stop to think about that this is going to be an audiobook. And so Jesse will do 4, there's a lot of scenes where there's 4 to 8 characters at a time, and she will do a different accent, enunciation, for all of them. And sometimes with the main heist crew, there's like a couple pages, right? Just dialogue scenes and arguing, but also like weird movie facts because they're film nerds, and she just like nailed it. So if you like audiobooks, and like comedic thrillers, that's a really good one. I do recommend that's a good option, because I was a little nervous about that. I didn't know what that was going to be like, and it was super cool just being kind of hearing in a different medium, and really, I wrote it, but hearing how like lines were said and just kind of the way that the voice actors were able to make the characters come alive is really elevated the book for me.
Amazing. I love that. That is so cool. Well, thank you so much, Tyler Schwanke of Breaking In from the How to Write a Book podcast. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We look forward to your next book.
Me too. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the How to Write a Book podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to keep up with me and my work, check out the website blackheartedstudios.com. That's www.blackheartedstudios.com. And follow me on Instagram at Mastiel Writes. That's at MASSIEL Writes. As a book coach and publisher, I'm passionate about helping aspiring authors bring their stories to life. So if you've been dreaming of writing a book and don't know where to start, head to my website and let's chat. You get a free 30 minutes on me. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks.